The FBI director shoots down U.S. President Donald Trump's tweeted claims that former President Barack Obama wiretapped him during the 2016 election. Could a new tuberculosis drug be the answer to effectively treat drug-sensitive and drug-resistant TB? We'll have a report. And confusion reigns as Africans are denied visas to attend an African Economic and Development Summit in Los Angeles. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now we'll have those stories shortly. But first, the United States on Tuesday has slapped restrictions on carry-on electronic devices on planes coming to America from 10 airports in Muslim-majority countries in North Africa and the Middle East in response to unspecified terrorism threats. Federal officials say passengers traveling from those airports cannot bring devices larger than a cell phone, such as tablets, portable DVD players, laptops and cameras, into the cabin. Instead, the items must be stored inside the checked baggage compartment. Now, the new restrictions were prompted by reports that extremist groups want to smuggle explosive devices in electronic gadgets. Officials told reporters on a conference call on Monday U.S. authorities did not provide further details on the threat. The airports affected are in Cairo, Istanbul, Kuwait City, Doha, Qatar, Casablanca, Morocco, Amman, Jordan, Riyadh and Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and Dubai and Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. Now, the carriers Royal Jordanian Airlines, Egypt Air, Turkish Airlines, Saudi Arabian Airlines, Kuwait Airways, Royal Air Morocco, Qatar Airways, Emirates and Etihad Airways have until Friday to comply with the new policy, which will be in place indefinitely. And we've just learned that Britain is also set to join the ban on larger electronic devices from some countries. Now, an incredible 6,000 migrants have been rescued on the Mediterranean Sea between North Africa and Italy in just the last few days. International Organization for Migration spokesman Joel Millman says greater numbers of migrants are now taking the route because of the warmer weather. 500 migrants are believed to have drowned or been killed this year, including 22 deaths just reported by the Libyan Coast Guard. Migrants seeking to reach Europe by sea, most of them sub-Saharan Africans, are mainly departing from Libya en route to Italy. The European Union and Turkey struck a deal last year, largely closing that route. Italian and European officials say they are ready to send equipment and economic aid to Libya to help fight traffickers who are thriving in a power vacuum left by the 2011 overthrow of former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Now, controversy over U.S. President Donald Trump's bombshell accusation that former President Barack Obama wiretapped him during the 2016 election took a new turn Monday when FBI Director James Comey shot down the president's tweeted claims during testimony on Capitol Hill. Director Comey also revealed the long-suspected existence of an FBI investigation into Russian election interference during the House Intelligence Committee's first public hearing on the issue. VOA's Catherine Gibson has a report.
Out in the open and confirmed.
The FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election.
At his first public opportunity to testify, FBI Director James Comey announcing that investigation includes a look at any possible links between Russia and the Trump campaign.
This will also include an assessment of whether any crimes were committed. Because it is an open, ongoing investigation and is classified, I cannot say more about what we are doing.
Well, that made for a long day, revealing few details of the investigation. Comey was able to confirm there was no evidence for the president's tweeted accusations of wiretapping.
I have no information that supports those tweets, and we have looked carefully inside the FBI.
A fact committee Democrats were eager to hammer home.
President Obama could not unilaterally order a wiretap of anyone.
No president could.
But that didn't put the surveillance issue to rest for Republicans who voiced their continued interest of investigating surveillance during the 2016 campaign.
It's still possible that other surveillance activities were used against President Trump and his associates.
And the leaks that revealed them in the months afterward.
Crimes have been committed by people in the government by leaking out information. So definitely crimes have been committed. I think the president overshot it by talking about a wiretap.
The leaks are the real story today, according to the president, taking to Twitter in the hours before a hearing that found Republicans talking less about foreign interference and more about the news media reporting classified information here in the U.S.
How would a reporter know about the existence of intercepted phone calls?
This first glimpse at the FBI investigation that's been going on since last October revealed a gap between Republicans and Democrats who said the next step was up to the White House.
I hope the president will have the strength of character to apologize not only to President Obama, who he defamed, but to the American people for leading us on this unfortunate wild goose chase.
A chase for evidence that resumes next week during a second Public Intelligence Committee hearing. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Capitol Hill.
U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is hosting the first full meeting since 2014 of foreign ministers and senior officials from the 68 countries and international organizations that are part of the U.S.-led coalition to fight Islamic State. Now, the State Department says the goal of the conference on Wednesday is to accelerate international efforts to defeat ISIS in the remaining areas of its holds in Iraq and Syria and maximize pressure on its branches, affiliates and networks. Here's VOA's Cindy Sain.
The fight against Islamic State and how to stabilize the region in Iraq and Syria will be the focus of the first major conference new Secretary of State Tillerson will host in Washington. The coalition has made considerable progress, but there is more work to be done, says acting spokesman Mark Toner.
First of all, it's an opportunity in the new administration to assess where we're at and what we want to do going forward. I don't want to steal any thunder from the secretary, but I think he will come with new ideas and new approaches and a new way of looking at how to defeat ISIS.
The strategy session will give Tillerson the chance to meet face-to-face with U.S. allies, says Michael O'Hanlon.
If there are any fresh policy ideas, all the better, but it's not even necessary. It's not even obligatory for that in a first session because people need to get to know each other as well. And of course, Rex Tillerson, Donald Trump, these are not people who are all that well known to the broader foreign policy or national security community, certainly not at a personal level.
O'Hanlon says there will be plenty of thorny issues for the coalition partners to discuss.
If they're Turkey, they've got millions of refugees on their soil and no end in sight to the war in Syria. The Western Europeans are still nervous about ISIS fighters coming back home, especially those who came from their countries in the first place to go to the battlefield and coming back and attempting terrorist campaigns. So no one's happy. No one should be happy. We are at a very intermediate stage of this campaign.
President Trump was critical of then-President Barack Obama for what he called a weak fight against IS militants. So analysts are watching to see if the new administration will chart a new course, as the center of action is expected to shift to the self-proclaimed capital of Islamic State, Raqqa. Cindy Sain, VOA News, the State Department.
Well, a plane that was carrying more than 20 people crashed in the South Sudanese city of Wau on Monday, causing some injuries but no deaths. South Supreme Airlines, which operated the plane, said all 21 people on board were safely evacuated after the plane crashed while attempting to land. It says some of the passengers are receiving treatment at the Wau hospital. United Nations peacekeepers worked with local emergency workers to evacuate passengers from the plane. An aircraft engineer at the Wau airport told VOA the plane tried to land in bad weather and hit a damaged truck on the side of the runway. South Supreme Airlines says the plane had been carrying 45 people, but 24 passengers disembarked at the plane's first stop in Awale town. Well, there was bad news for the United Nations last week as President Donald Trump announced he is seeking a 28% budget cut for diplomacy and foreign aid, which includes an unspecified reduction in funding to the United Nations and its agencies. VOA UN correspondent Margaret Bashir reports that the potential cuts come as the UN is struggling to cope with an unprecedented number of major issues.
The United Nations is already stretched to capacity.
We stand at a critical point in our history. Already at the beginning of the year, we are facing the largest humanitarian crisis since the creation of the United Nations. Now, more than 20 million people across 4 countries face starvation and famine. Without collective and coordinated global efforts, people will simply starve to death.
The United States is the UN's largest donor, contributing about $611 million this year to the regular budget of more than $2.5 billion. Washington also contributes more than $2 billion annually to support UN peacekeeping missions, and hundreds of millions more to vital programs, including the UN Children's Fund and the World Food Program. VOA spoke with Peter Yo, president of the Better World campaign, via Skype.
We pay 22% of the UN's bills, which basically means that other countries pay 78%. That's a good return for American taxpayers.
UN officials and observers are worried that other nations will not adequately fill a gaping financial hole left by the United States should it drastically cut funds to the organization.
Abrupt funding cuts can't force the adoption of ad hoc measures that will undermine the impact of longer-term reform efforts.
The U.S. budget chief was unapologetic when asked if he was worried that some of the world's most vulnerable people could suffer as a result.
We're absolutely reducing funding to the UN and to the various foreign aid programs, including those run by the UN and other agencies. That should come as a surprise to no one who watched the campaign. The president said specifically hundreds of times, you covered him, I'm going to spend less money on people overseas and more money on people back home. And that's exactly what we're doing with this budget.
For decades, the U.S. has made international development and humanitarian aid a cornerstone of its foreign policy. Peter Yo says that needs to continue.
We need to stay engaged, we need to remain a global leader, and we need to make sure that we do our share to meet the legitimate humanitarian needs of people around the world.
Yo believes Congress understands this and will ultimately support strong, sustained humanitarian funding. Margaret Bashir, VOA News, the United Nations.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA_Macaulay. Now, coming up, a new tuberculosis drug that may be the answer to effectively treat sensitive and drug-resistant TB. Stay with us.
Health news and notes. This is Living Better.
An Australian scientist is carrying a new device to an ambulance that could help first responders better diagnose and treat stroke victims. It's a helmet that uses microwaves to detect bleeding patterns in the brain. Researcher Michael Nilsson.
It's essential to know if it is a bleed or a clot, because nowadays the stroke units, they can treat patients with a clot and dissolve the clot.
And that could be quick help for a victim with a clot. But if the stroke is a result of a blood leak or bleed, different tactics are necessary for emergency health workers.
It has the capacity and the potential to be implemented in all ambulances globally. So it is a game-changing potential.
The stroke helmet will be tested in New South Wales emergency departments and then rolled out to ambulances in 2018. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
It's time now for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Madu with some new information on tuberculosis research. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Vincent. The Medicines Patent Pool, a UN-backed public health organization, has teamed up with Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore to facilitate the clinical development of tuberculosis drug candidate Sutazolid. The World Health Organization says 1.4 million people died of TB in 2015. Tuberculosis is the leading cause of death in people living with HIV, and only 52% of multi-drug-resistant TB patients and 28% of extensively drug-resistant TB patients are successfully being treated. Cetazolide is an oxazolidinone antibiotic, and medical experts say the antibiotic is a promising investigational treatment that could be an answer to more effectively treat both drug-sensitive and drug-resistant TB in patients. Joining me now live via Skype from Geneva, Switzerland, is Chan Park, General Counsel of the Medicines Patent Pool. Mr. Chan, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us more about the new drug cetazolide. What are some of the specifics that make it a potential answer to XDR and MDR TB?
Well, cetazolide is a drug that has been developed up to what we call phase 2A clinical development. And so we don't know all there is to know about cetazolide at the moment. We do need to conduct further clinical investigations in humans to actually know whether it will be safe and effective in humans. But in those early trials, it did show less toxicity, which is a huge problem, particularly for treatment for MDR-TB, and more efficacy than the other drug in its class that cetazolide can potentially replace, called the linezolid. And so what the Medicines Patent Pool is now doing is seeking interested drug developers, whether they be companies or governments or product development partnerships, to take a license from the Medicines Patent Pool to conduct further clinical trials on this promising drug candidate.
But when we look at the statistics with regards to how many people are being treated effectively, for example, with MDR-TB, it's almost 1 in 2, only 1 in 2. So this is really troubling. For a long time, there hasn't been any new TB drug. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, that's right, and that's a huge problem facing the landscape of TB treatment these days. There have been 2 new drugs that have recently gained approval, but other than that, the drugs that we have available to treat TB are all over 50 years old, and so these are not the most effective treatments possible. And the reason for that is because of the fact that the vast majority of the TB burden lies in the developing world, in low and middle-income countries. So the classical incentive mechanisms that exist for diseases that exist in high-income countries just simply does not exist in TB, and as a result, there is insufficient research and development devoted to TB by the large multinational pharmaceutical companies. And it is our hope that with this license and with increased interest developed from this license, that more attention can be devoted to research and development for TB.
Okay, very quickly, when could we anticipate to see cetazolide available?
Well, we are currently in advanced discussions with an entity to take a license to conduct further clinical trials, and it's always difficult to predict how the clinical trials will eventually pan out. But we are looking at a number of years before clinical trials, phase 2B and phase 3 clinical trials can be completed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Park. We appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
And that was Chan Park. He is General Counsel of the Medicines Patent Pool. Now, the World Health Organization has announced the formation of an interagency coordination group on antimicrobial resistance, or AMR. Antimicrobial resistance happens when microorganisms such as bacteria, fungi, viruses, and parasites change when they are exposed to antimicrobial drugs. As a result, the medicines become ineffective and infections persist in the body, increasing the risk of spread to others. The World Health Organization says AMR threatens the effective prevention and treatment of an ever-increasing range of infections globally. WHO Chief Margaret Chan says the political declaration is a vital commitment to help tackle the scourge of antimicrobial resistance globally.
AMR is a development issue. It is also important for poverty alleviation, sustainable food production, the environment, particularly waters and sanitation as well. So because of the multi-sectoral nature of the issue, and exactly, we do require a multi-sectoral response. Without tackling this problem, we cannot achieve the SDG 2030 development agenda. It would be good for governments to put in place regulation and gradually transition to separation of prescribing and sale. The demand from patients is also a big driver. Many patients suffering from viral infection would not leave the doctor's surgery without a prescription of antibiotics. So I think education awareness is important to all partners involved.
And Dr. Chan promises that the group appointed by the Secretary General will get to work right away. The interagency group will support governments across the world as well as advise on the use and abuse of antibiotics for people and livestock. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter @LenourMoudou. Vincent?
Well, thank you very much, Lenore. I'll be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health report every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Well, the University of Southern California each year hosts the African Economic and Development Summit, bringing delegations of African business leaders, government officials, and others to network with their counterparts in the U.S. But this year, the African Summit had no Africans. They were all denied visas. VOA's Michelle Quinn reports from Los Angeles.
We have a major visa issue.
The African Economic Summit is usually an opportunity for people to network and talk about trade between the U.S. and Africa. But not many people are here this year, says event organizer Mary Flowers.
Usually we get about 40% that get rejected, but the others come. This year it was 100%, every delegation, and it was sad to see because these people were so disheartened of what happened.
This is the fourth year Flowers has put on this African Trade and Development event. But U.S. embassies in African countries denied attendees visas, about 100 people by her estimation. The countries affected included Sierra Leone, Guinea, Ghana, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and South Africa.
These kinds of things happen that makes it very difficult and challenging for us to connect.
Flowers doesn't know why all of the Africans heading to her event were denied visas this year, but she suspects it has something to do with the broader visa and travel controversy under President Trump. She's appealed to current and former lawmakers, including former Congresswoman Diane Watson.
There are ambassadors that were scheduled to be here at this summit that were denied visas. They rejected their visas. As you know, under the current administration, they are limiting the number of people who come from the continent of Africa into America, and they're denying the visas.
Watson says she has called the State Department to ask for information, but the State Department isn't allowed to discuss individual visa cases. There have been reports of U.S. embassies worldwide denying more travel visas. But it's hard to know for sure. The available State Department data only goes up to last fall.
I have to say that most of us feel that it is a discrimination issue with the African nations because we experience it over and over and over. And the people that are being rejected are people that are legitimate business people with ties to the continent.
People were hoping to do business here, but not much has happened. Organizers vow to get to the bottom of it. Michelle Quinn, VOA News, Los Angeles.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a scientific breakthrough. University of Spain scientists say they have learned how to manufacture a fully functional human skin. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Somalia, the United Nations opened a drought operations coordination center over the weekend in the Somali city of Baidoa. In South Sudan, all 43 passengers and 6 crew members survived the plane crash that occurred in the town of Wal on Monday. In Libya, authorities returned more than 170 migrants to Ivory Coast with the help of the International Organization for Migration. Finally, in South Africa, acid mine water pollution exposes residents for decades to health risks ranging from cancer to respiratory and skin diseases. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Well, what's the largest human organ? It's an old riddle, and the answer, of course, is skin. It's amazing stuff. Just ask any doctor about its role in protecting what's inside of us from all kinds of trouble. That's why it is a big deal that university scientists in Spain have learned how to manufacture what they say is fully functional human skin with a 3D printer. VOA's Kevin Enochs explains.
Scientists have been growing skin in the laboratory for quite some time, but using a bioprinter, scientists say, is a huge breakthrough.
Being able to use a bioprinter to control the amount of skin over time and space gives us new possibilities that were unimaginable when we worked manually.
The key to the process is bioink, a concoction of plasma containing human skin cells, connective tissue cells called fibroblasts, and other biological materials. The bioengineering firm Biodan is collaborating with the researchers. Team leaders say the growing process involves spraying bioinks onto a print bed where the skin forms.
Lo que se fabrica es piel 100% humana.
We produce 100% human skin with its two main layers, dermis and epidermis, able to create its own collagen. It can be used in the medical or industrial sector for injuries or burns. It can also be used in testing in the chemical, pharmaceutical, or cosmetics industries.
The bioskin can be created using a person's own skin cells for medical use like treating severe burns. The printer can produce about 100 square centimeters of printed skin in about half an hour. The researchers say from here, the next logical step is to bioengineer all kinds of organs.
The idea for future would be to be able to fully print complex organs such as hearts or kidneys. But as I said, that's the desire and the dream all of us who work in this field have, but there is no date for it yet.
The bioskin is currently being studied by European regulatory agencies to make sure it's safe, but could soon be available for medical and pharmaceutical use. Kevin Enochs, VOA News, Washington.
Well, and that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A plate is a dish that you put your food on.
Have a lot on your plate.
Hey Anna, I'm having a party this weekend. You should come.
I wish I could, but my weekend is really busy. I'm baking a wedding cake, writing my article, teaching 2 classes, and oh, my parents are visiting.
Wow, you have a lot